Welcome to the Old Man of the Three with JJ Reddick and Tommy Alter, brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 178. Rich Paul. We recorded this, Tommy, with Rich right here in this studio about a month ago. Rich, of course, just came out with his memoir, Lucky Me, by Rich Paul. And he just was on 60 Minutes, actually, not too long ago as well, discussing the book. I feel like we asked 5 questions. Yeah. Rich is just very open and candid.
Rich talks a lot,
but in a good way. Like incredible storytelling. We get into his life, we get into his career. We had to ask a couple questions about LeBron, of course. But which, he's pushed back on this narrative that, he's lucky because he worked with LeBron from the beginning. But the reality is, Rich has built an incredible business, an incredible brand. I think I read the other day he's got $4 billion in NBA contracts alone that he's negotiated, and just a phenomenal story about his life. Go check that book out.
I would say one of the great characters both in basketball, but then also in all sports now.
Yeah,
just in terms of obviously his success, but just how he's a personality. Everyone has a rich story, and we get into some of that with him.
Yeah. I tell the story actually about Rich stealing my bottle of 1961 Bartolo Mascarolo from the live show with Draymond, which I'll let you listen to that.
Still not.
I was telling somebody the other day, they were like, "Who do you guys have on the podcast next week?" And I'm like, "Oh, we were doing the Rich Paul episode. We recorded it a month ago." And I was telling them about that story with him stealing my Magnum of Mascarello, and I'm like, yeah, now that I think about it, I did a Zoom with Rich like a year and a half ago, and I had to ask him a question, and it was a question where there was probably a little dynamic of power at play, right? It was a dynamic of power, and so I get on the Zoom, and Rich is he's got his barber over, and he's getting his haircut while I'm doing the Zoom with him. And I'm just like, this guy's he's a monster, dude. He's
a beast.
He's the man. He's the man. We love Rich. Before we get to this, just a reminder, Old Man of the Three Things, our weekly Monday show. We've been doing episodes with Nikias and Steve over from the Dunker Spot. We are doing an episode next week with Tim Legler. So Tim and Nikias and Steve will be joining me every Monday. That is currently available on Amazon Music and the Wondery Plus app. But we'll have some awesome episodes coming up. Before we get to Rich, I want to discuss a few teams in the NBA that I'm intrigued by, that we haven't necessarily spent a ton of time on. We've talked about because of their offseason signings. Those 3 teams are the Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference. I want to start in the West because I think it's pretty much unanimous amongst NBA analysts and people that talk about the NBA on Twitter and people that have podcasts and people that talk about the NBA on TV that there are 12 potentially really good teams. I think you can whittle that down probably to 10 or 11 really good teams in the Western Conference. Regardless, the West is going to be a monster.
Yeah.
And Kevin Pelton from ESPN had his yearly win predictions that he released not too long ago. And I went on a long rant this week on the Old Man of the Three Things about that model that Kevin Pelton uses and why we need to take that with a grain of salt. I won't get into that right now, but Memphis, he predicted, would have the most regular season wins in the Western Conference. And I find that fascinating. Ja Morant's going to miss 25 games.
Yep.
Memphis right now on DraftKings Sportsbook at plus 1,300. They've got the 7th best odds to win the Western Conference at plus 1,300. I think about the regular season. I think the impact of missing Ja is important. The impact of your guy, Tyus Jones, going to Washington is important. I don't know that they're going to have a stellar regular season. I do know they're going to be a monster come playoff time.
Do you think the big question, Ja aside with them, is how Marcus Smart fits into this system and whether the obvious intangibles that he brought to the table in Boston were possibly unique to Boston? Is that something that can translate into another situation and another system?
I do, because I think Marcus kind of understands who he is as a player and where his impact is most felt. And it's not just the defensive impact.
Yeah.
It's the personality. It's the competitive edge. And I've told this story many times, but I just remember being in the bubble. And, you're staying at all different hotels, and the hotels are based on record, right? So we were out of the playoffs when the bubble started. And so we stayed in the worst hotel. But you visit other hotels for dinner. The conference center where they had set up all the basketball courts for practice, the sort of the temporary courts for practice. You're passing teams, you're walking by teams, you're interacting with teams, right? And so I didn't see the Miami Heat a lot, but oftentimes they would practice around the same time or have shoot around the same time that we did. And I remember saying to myself, "Wow, the Miami Heat, they walk around with fuck you written on their forehead." Like they were there in a serious manner.
Yeah.
And honestly, the only other team that I really felt that about was the Memphis Grizzlies. I was like, damn, Taylor Jenkins, like he is serious.
Has them locked in.
Yeah, he is serious. And so I think Marcus, like he fits into this culture that they built here where there's accountability, right? There's a competitive edge night to night that you have to play with to fit into this Memphis Grizzlies team. And, they lose Dillon Brooks, and we've done enough segments on Dillon Brooks at this point. Everybody knows how much of a fan I am of Dillon. Like Marcus, in some ways, like kind of fills that void that you lose when you lose Dillon Brooks.
Yeah. The other guy who I feel like has a chip on his shoulder who is going to fit in, who's not to, judge too much in preseason, but has looked really good is D Rose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just he's like a guy that I think there's a part of him that's like people thought I've done.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think D Rose, depending on, the rotations and the lineups to start the season, I think D Rose ultimately could be a really good backup to Ja Morant for this team. I don't know how much you can play like Derek and Ja together just because of the shooting and the spacing issues.
Yeah.
But he's going to provide a lift. And then the guy that I kind of thought he had a great like last 20, 30 games of the regular season is Jaren Jackson Jr., who I would say was a little disappointing in the World Cup. But offensively, if he takes another leap, and Desmond Bane as well, if he continues to develop his off the bounce game, like you're talking about a really formidable team.
I have a question, and this is going to lead into the Pelicans conversation.
Yeah.
Just looking at the DraftKings odds right now, Memphis is plus 1,300, Dallas is plus 1,200, the Kings are plus 2,500. If you're a Kings fan, person around that team after what they did last year, after how close they got to beating the Warriors in the playoffs last year, they didn't lose anyone. Like you look at that a little bit, that feels a little disrespectful.
Interesting. Disrespectful. I like it. I mean, I like. You could say that.
It'll give motivation, I guess.
Right. They were third in the West last year. They get the 8th best odds on DraftKings. They're a team that's sort of betting on that continuity, right? Electing to use their cap space to re-sign Harrison Barnes to an extension, re-sign Sabonis to an extension. So I think the guy for them that probably has to take a year or two leap is Keegan Murray, right? De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, we know what these guys are at this point. They're all NBA type players. They're all stars. And so there's got to be a level of internal improvement from Keegan Murray specifically, I think, to get them sort of to the next level where I would consider them like a tier 1 contender. It's funny because in January of last year, I was big on the Grizzlies and I was big on the Pelicans, and of course Zion got hurt. In terms of what I've seen with the Pelicans, you've got a healthy Zion. He's still working his way back. CJ McCollum is healthy. He played with like 3 injuries at the end of last season. They've been running some of that inverted pick and roll with CJ screening for Zion, something that I did when I played with Zion. And it's really effective action because Zion's such a good ball handler. You don't really want to switch that. And then CJ popping into space, either shooting or playing off the bounce. There's a lot of stuff that I like that they're doing in preseason. My concern actually with them, in terms of like big picture, is obviously Zion's health. My concern is like Zion Williamson defensively in a playoff series. And look, I know it's preseason, but some of the just simple efforts, simple rotations, simple closeouts, being in a stance, like I just haven't seen that engagement from him. And I think young players sometimes can get caught up in like, oh, I blocked a couple shots or I got a steal. Like, let's not talk about counting stats. Let's talk about like team defense. And it's interesting because if you look, a lot of times like the Zion Williamson minutes, the Pelicans have defended better than the non-Zion Williamson minutes. But when I think about playoffs, I'm thinking about who are we targeting? And if he's not engaged defensively, that's a concern for me. I think talent-wise, this team, if they're healthy, could still be like a top 4, top 3 team in the regular season and have home court advantage in the first round.
Is that defensive question, would that be the same thing with Valanciunas? Not necessarily an effort thing, but just as a guy that gets targeted with his...
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, yes. But I think with that, it's more like it's a steady diet of heavy drop coverage. And, if you sort of look at the Western Conference, you go through, it's like not ideal against Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, right? Not ideal against Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal and the Phoenix Suns. So I do think the health of Larry Nance for the Pelicans and his ability to, and he was hurt last year. He gets like a pass on last season because he was trying to play through his injury. He got worse. I think his potential versatility in a playoff series to be able to be up and pick and roll, to be able to switch, that's important. But ultimately, like, you need full engagement from these guys. And look, like, they were 6th defensively last year. Herb Jones is a monster. Like, they have, I think, enough talent to be a contender in some capacity. And then the other team I wanted to mention was the Cleveland Cavaliers, because we've got to give the obligatory Cleveland talk on this podcast because Rich Paul.
Have to.
Yeah, we have to. They're at plus 1,000. They have the 4th best odds, which I actually find really interesting that Philly is still at plus 750 and has the 3rd best odds given the uncertainty around James Harden. Miami right behind Cleveland at plus 1,100, and that's followed by the Knicks at plus 1,800 with the 6th best odds. But Cleveland, to me, I said this to like a friend the other day. We were on the golf course talking about the NBA, and he was like, "Oh, how do you think this season's going to go?" And he's like, "What about this team? What about that team?" And I said to him, "Look, Boston's going to be awesome. Milwaukee's going to be awesome. Cleveland, they got bullied in the first round last year against the Knicks. They're going to be awesome in the regular season.
Yeah,
they addressed their needs. They addressed their deficiencies. You would assume Evan Mobley going to get a little bit better. You would assume that Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell pairing going to be a little bit better. I'm really high on them as a regular season team. And the thing I'm going to monitor throughout this season with them is the specific matchups against a healthy Celtics team, a healthy Bucks team. I think matchups against Joel Embiid, matchups against the Knicks, matchups against like the teams that they will have to beat. They're going to run through the fucking Detroit Pistons, the Cleveland Cavaliers, those type of teams. They're going to run through these teams. It's the matchups against those top tier Eastern Conference teams, how they operate in clutch time, the lineups they use in clutch time. That's what for me, like, it's the Bucks and Celtics. But the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to be awesome this season.
So it felt like in the playoff series last year, the 2 big flaws were 3-point shooting and defensive rebounding in general, but defensive rebounding in particular. They clearly made additions on the 3-point side. So they've made they've done things there to make that better. Do you feel like the rebounding? So is that just
listen, they were a good defensive rebounding team last year. They're really good. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I remember, during that playoff series, I was like, no, this has been a good defensive rebounding team. It was a bad matchup.
Yeah.
It was the best offensive rebounding team in the league. It was Mitchell Robinson. It was Hertenstein. Hertenstein. It was Julius Randle, Josh Hart flying in for the wing.
Is it possible some of that was also just like that was those guys' first playoff action? Is there any of that?
Some of that potentially, yeah. I mean, I think that's a real thing when you go through it and you're like, oh, this is what playoff
the Garden's
basketball
rocking.
is. Yeah. But anyways, that they're a team. I think as we get further and further along in the regular season, and we start collecting data, we start watching film. They're a team that is like a sort of dark horse championship contender because I think they're going to be really, really good.
I like those odds.
Yeah. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 and over age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. All right, let's get to our conversation with the one and only Rich Paul. All right, let's welcome in Rich Paul. Rich, thanks for doing this, man.
No. Thank you guys for having me. I know Tommy's been trying to figure this thing out for like
badgering him for
2 years.
Every time I see Rich in person, I'm like, dude, are we doing this or what? Are we doing? You had to have a book come out. I want to talk about the book in a second.
Okay.
I got to start the show, I want to tell one Rich Paul story. Okay.
Uh-oh.
You and I have spoken. There was a time, I think in 17 or 18, where we talked about you potentially representing me when I was leaving Wasserman. So I've known you a while.
Yes.
I don't know you like as a close friend. And this is you did something that only a close friend would do. And I have so much respect that you did this. So we did a live show with Draymond right after they won the finals. We're back in the green room. And Draymond had lost a bet to me. Duke beat Michigan State. So he brings me a nice 06 bottle of Richburg. I had brought an older Magnum of Bartolo Mascarello. I think it was a 67 or a 71, something like that. It's in the green room. I open it up. Stephen A. Smith's in there. Pour him a glass. Pour everybody a little taste. My plan for that Magnum was to bring it on stage with us and drink it. Rich comes in the room, pours himself a little glass. I turn around for 5 seconds. Next thing I know, Rich has the bottle in his hands and he takes it out to the audience and it's gone.
They were dumbfounded. JJ and Draymond were dumbfounded. They were speechless. They didn't have anything to say.
The thing about that is I had some people with me. And
I actually didn't care. I was like, that is a fucking boss move right there.
JJ, if I have a bottle, he can do the same thing. You know, he can come to my house and whatever bottle he want, he can take it out the thing, no problem.
Rich, your book, Lucky Me, is out. I thought it was really interesting. As far as I can see, prior to the epilogue, there's maybe one mention of LeBron and a couple mentions in the epilogue of LeBron. This book is about you and your upbringing and not even your career, just like how you got to the point of meeting LeBron. And it is incredibly candid and vulnerable. What was the motivation behind writing this type of book?
So I didn't want a puff piece of a look what I did. I didn't want a LeBron piece. Obviously, everyone knows our story and it's great, how we connected, etc. But what this was more about for me was allowing kids to understand, and not just kids, starting there, but also adults. Like, as you go through life, it's layered. And we'll hear this all the time. It's not about where you start, it's where you finish, right? And I grew up in a world in which the finish ends so early, right? And normally it ends through death or the loss of your freedom based upon the things that you had to do to survive. And I wanted to write a book to help people understand that you're going to go through things, but everyone wake up every day, somebody, and it's definitely more to you than what's in front of you. And so I felt if I can share some of my stories that allow people to understand that, hey, here's this young man that is currently sitting in this position, but this is not where he started. And as he went through these challenges and ups and downs and arounds of life, these things actually became these experiences. You know, when we talk about these experiences, growing up in my dad's store, learning math in my dad's store, right? Through a transaction or through playing the lottery machine for someone, learning customer service in my dad's store, learning marketing, understanding this candy right here sold out this morning. So when we go back to the wholesale store, I'm going to buy 2 more of these now because we need more. Kids like this. This bag of chips, kids like. This bag of chips, kids don't like. So now when the Frito-Lay man comes into the store, I can have a conversation with him as a kid saying, I know these sell. So now we need 2 boxes of the Cool Ranch Doritos because people like them and the Flamin' Hot Cheetos. We don't really need the Funyuns like that because that's an acquired, you know? And so you would think, oh, what does that matter today? Well, when I'm sitting in a shoe meeting at a New Balance, at a Nike, at an Adidas, you know, when I'm understanding how to market a client, when I'm understanding the importance of detail, and I'm talking to one of my clients about their position on the team and understanding how to star in their role and professionalism. Well, I didn't get that at a university. I got that from my block, my dad's store, my life experiences. When you talk about vulnerability, just in your relationship with your wife, right? In order for it to work, you had to be vulnerable. She had to see you cry. I'd seen you talk about it when you were going through it and you didn't know if you wanted to stop playing the game or not. You had to cry. You had to show her your emotion. You were in fucking New Orleans wanting to be back home with your family and you just couldn't do it no more. Well, for me growing up, and as you read the book, we couldn't be vulnerable. I grew up without my mother. So I didn't have that emotion that most kids would have. Well, how does that help me today? If I'm in a negotiation, I don't have any friends. I could, as long as my client could sit out here, I can sit out here forever because I'm not tied to anything. And so when you talk about the understanding and I wanted people to understand how I was built, right? Because in a world that I live in today, you know, JJ, you played the game. People can drive a narrative. People can tell you what they want to hear, what they think you want to hear in that moment. There's very few people that look you in your eyes and feel as a man to man, not about finances, but they have to always do what's right for you. This book, my neighborhood, my dad, even my mom in a lot of instances when she was there and it got better towards the end, when you read this book, you understand how I feel, how I think, why I do things the way I do it. And I didn't want it to be just about me. Every chapter in this book, somebody could relate to, including yourself. And we grew up in 2 totally different environments. That don't mean you don't have a shared experience of some sort. And so I never wanted the book. I can't skip the steps, right? When you come off that pin down, you can't skip. Your shoulders got to be square. You got to come off it shoulder to shoulder so the man can't get through. Now you got enough time to get to your shot. If you skip one of those things, you don't shoot. What was your career from the 3?
41.5 or something like that.
Which is insane. You don't shoot that, right? different clothes out, different everything. And so it's the same thing. I couldn't skip steps when I walked out my dad's store, when I walked out my grandmother's house, because you learn to develop these survival skills. And then you also learn that it's not always about you. Sometimes it's about, if you read, it's one of those chapters where I talk about my friend Cactus. I don't know what chapter it was, I forget. But when I talk about my friend Cactus in the book, I understood in that moment that it wasn't about me. He was going through something. But based upon how I could react or that situation, I could not be here right now based upon me not understanding and being able to pivot. And so everyone goes through whether you're in the corporate world, whether you're in, any environment, any neighborhood. And so I didn't want to write a book that said, oh, look how great I am, look what I accomplished, etc. That don't help people, right? Like, they need to understand, how did you get there and why are you as successful as you are? And you have to show this vulnerable side to it, because in order for you to grow, I understood that vulnerability came into play. Now, we wasn't vulnerable because you couldn't show vulnerability in the neighborhood that I grew up in, because people would take advantage of that.
Was this process, was it cathartic in some ways?
Absolutely. Listen, man, bro, I'm telling you right now, I worked in Beverly Hills. I used to get in my car as a teenager. Don't matter what time it is. Don't matter what time it is. And that car ride on any day, Sunday to Sunday, it wasn't like you enjoyed it. It was almost like how these kids play Grand Theft Auto, GTA.
Yeah.
That was me. That was my life. Without all the violence of it, but getting behind the police, getting behind me, I'm doing absolutely nothing wrong. But you didn't have to be doing anything wrong. You look like you're doing something wrong, so let us pull you over. There was no such thing as, oh, give me your license and registration, and it's, no, you're pulling me over for no reason, number one. And I'm definitely got something on me of something. And if I don't, somebody in this car definitely does. You understand what I'm saying? And it wasn't a thing of like, oh, well, that's yours. No, that's all of you, because we don't give a shit about none of you. To us, you should be locked up in a cage any fucking way. This was how I grew up. So right now, today, and I know I'm not doing nothing. We're talking about 25, 30 years ago, but I'm driving. And I pay taxes to pay my police department in my neighborhood. But that feeling is still there. So when you talk about trauma, yes, it's traumatizing. There's days I don't sleep, even at the level that I am in terms of business, because I grew up in this society that it's a war going on. There's a song, and it starts with that. Like, there's a war going on outside, no man is safe from. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's.
Would you categorize it as a war of survival? Like, how would you categorize the war? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because you remember when they brought the Rich Paul rule out?
Yeah.
And I was extremely upset about that. But I knew.
For the listener, just explain the Rich Paul rule real quick, or I can do it. But why don't you?
Yeah, the Rich Paul rule technically was a rule that the NCAA wanted to implement that said you had to have a higher education and a criteria. You had to have this specific criteria to represent guys that were going to test the water coming out to decide if they wanted to go pro or not. And the public named it the Rich Paul rule based upon the criteria that it needed to have, because they're saying, wait a minute, that's targeted towards one person.
It's a one-man rule.
Right. And when I wrote the op-ed, I talked about it in there. And when you read this book, it helps you understand better. People always say, well, you got choices, right? Society will say, oh, you have a choice. Well, really? Because I knew a girl who was extremely smart. She went to Cornell. I went to her graduate. We drove to her graduation, commencement, right? That's what they call it in college, right? Commencement. Cornell had a program for hospitality. She crossed that stage in the highest of, tiers in hospitality. She comes back home. You think she got a job in hospitality? She's a young Black girl, made it from 105 in St. Clair, Cleveland, Ohio, went to Cornell, excelled at Cornell. So this thing is, you have a choice. That was just an example that when I'm at the commencement, I'm like, I'm proud to be there. We drove there. I'm proud to be there. Ithaca, New York.
Yeah, I've been to Cornell.
Right.
I've been there. It's an interesting place.
But then I had to watch her have this time of trying to find an occupation. She couldn't find it. And she had all the things that she needed to get.
All the things. She had all the things.
She had everything to get the job. So as a young Black male, no mom in the house, and I was the youngest, so I had older siblings, which was great for me. But flip that coin. Think about being the oldest. Think about being the older female. You got little sisters. We don't have time to worry about higher education when the rent's 6 months due. We're barely getting by on ramen noodles and chili willies, and sometimes Flamin' Hots and the juice was dinner. So now here's all these things that present themselves, whether it's dice, whether it's selling some type of drug, etc. And I'm not glorifying it, but you're trying to survive. And then what happens is you get caught in this. The pool of the streets is that same pool that you get when you hit a golf ball and you hit it clean and you like, damn, and you want to go back. That pool of the streets feel like that. The only difference is, if you play at Riviera, where I play sometimes, they have a nice banana chocolate smoothie, which is unbelievable. I'm only good for like 7 holes, because after the 7th hole, I get the thing and then I'm done. But that pull of the streets is different. Once it pulls you, now you're in the eye of the tornado, and anything could happen. I was 12 years old. I got off my bus. Me and my brother just had this conversation the other day. I got off my bus, man, and I was walking to my dad's store. And next to my dad's store is where my friends RD and me and their mom lived upstairs. And then there was a lady named Miss Walker who used to live downstairs. She died, but she used to be the candy lady. You go in there, and she was, when I was in the 2nd grade, she was 85. So that was in 88. She was 85, and she was older, and kids would steal from her and stuff like that. And she didn't care, but it was just a thing. But anyway, now she's passed away, and this family's living there. And I'm walking up on these guys, and they're my brother's friends, and they're smoking. And I'm like, what the hell is that? What is that? And they're smoking embalming fluid, wet, PCP. But they're smoking it, right? And I remember having a conversation with them. I said, man, why are you smoking that? And, this ain't nothing, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And just last year, 2 of these guys that was out here smoking, they're grown now, grown men, found dead in Lake Erie. I get the call. They missing. What do you mean they missing? They found the car. The car is at Lake Erie in the parking lot. Their phones are inside the car. That's strange. And they're the closest of friends. They're so close, they're like brothers. That's strange. they have to be in the lake. Turns out there's a video of this thing on the phone of them kind of talking, and then so what we think is whatever took place, one of them slipped in, the other one tried to go in and save him. That's my brother, and they both die. I know all they. I'm in L.A. I'm still connected. That hurt me. I know it hurt my brother because those are his friends closer to me, but these are guys who watched over me, right? And I interacted with and did a lot of different things with. And so it never ends, bro. Like people don't understand. Like it just, and it definitely never ends when you care. So now when I take those things into my work, I can't sit in front of a family and lie. It's to the point to where I'm so passionate about not lying and telling you what you want to hear. I lose out because of it.
I would assume if you take that approach, number one, you're going to lose out on potential new clients.
All the time.
And I assume if you're doing that with your existing clients, you sometimes lose them as well.
All the time.
You know what's interesting? We can transition away from what we're talking about. I did want to ask you about this though. The agent business, right? There are agents who tell you what you want to hear, and there are agents who tell you what you need to hear. And so what you're talking about, how do you navigate that with clients or potential clients when you're telling them something that they don't want to hear, but they need to hear?
I stay consistent, JJ. I can't. You read the book, bro. Like I don't know another way. I just don't. And I said this on a different, I don't feel like I ever lost a player. I don't feel that way. Because I feel like I bring so much value to you that you lose me too. But if you don't recognize that value or value the value, then it's like you never you never really understood it to begin with. Like, again, you're married, you got a family. You value your wife like never before. You definitely value your wife even more now that you get to spend every day with her and see, when you're getting up and going to shoot arounds and you got to be on the road for 4 or 5 days. Yeah, you talking at night before you go to bed, but it's a different dynamic now that you're home, in the home every day and you work a different job. All I try to do is help these kids understand, bro. That's why this is so important. This book is so important to me because this is not fictitious. I'm not faking the funk about anything. I don't respect the agent business at all. I respect maybe 4 agents in our entire business. Definitely none of the older ones because forget about it. I mean, there's so many reasons I can tell you, right? And as I grow older in this business, I'm giving the game to the ones coming behind me. I'm not charging you for it. I'm not smiling in your face and then talking behind your back. I'm not doing any of that type of stuff. That's not, the consequences are in this book. I can't do that.
You think, I mean, you mentioned this in the book, but you're like, when some of these games growing up, it's like if you lied or you cheated, you end up dead.
Of course.
And so that's part
or
of
close
it.
to it. So when when a client is no longer with us, and there's been guys that go on and sign max deals, I don't feel no certain type of way. Because if you were willing, and a lot of it has to do with ego too, by the way. See, a lot of it has to do with these companies, and I know this for a fact. One of the reasons why I'm here today is because people think that, Rich, or LeBron saw Rich as his boy and just put his boy on. No, that could not be further from the truth. So now we've created this environment where everyone wants to do that so they feel accomplished. But what happens is when you do that and you give this control to somebody that doesn't understand the position they're in, your job isn't to go and make the best deal for you. So you can ride in the Mercedes, or you could pretend to be doing the work and you sell it short for a lesser charge, or you create this environment to where this is how they get you. They got a couple guys you're close to, they're getting the new guys now. it's going to be all about you. Why would you be somewhere that has LeBron and whatever, and Rich has his own shoe, and this? We're going to make it about you. We're going to build your Spring Hill. What are you talking about? We're going to give you $4 million to sign with us. What? Why would you? I don't need that. Like what? But if you so into yourself, that sounds great. Right? My dad's story, and this is why it don't bother me, because I know I've seen this 1,000 times over. My dad had a store. I know for a fact some people didn't shop at my dad's store because if they saw me with the new Jordans on, in their mind, they're doing what? Paying for those shoes. Right? And I don't like that. So I'll go around the corner and spend with the person that doesn't look like us and is not Rich's dad. Right? Well, let's apply it to today. If you come here, you can, why would you be with Rich Paul? You could be your own Rich Paul. You could be Rich Paul. Not toot my own horn, but I don't find that to be true. And I look at it the other way. If Rich got to this place and he built it's not like he had a client, he built an actual business, and you want to be in this business, wouldn't you think that it's more beneficial for you to be, if I wanted to learn how to shoot a jump shot and I had the ability to spend time and work out with JJ Redick every day, I'm going to beat you to the gym. I'm going to beat you to, there's no conversation to have. JJ, what time we work out tomorrow? I'll be at the gym at 11. When you pull up, I'm there. And I'm already shooting because I know you shoot the ball better than me. There's very few people shoot the ball better than JJ Redick, okay? So now, but that's not how we think in the Black community. And this is what I'm trying to show. So now they look at it as, they throw the LeBron card out there, obviously. Then they come back and the guy next to the guy, oh, you could be Rich, like you could be. That's no different than, oh, you the man? Well, I got to kill you in order for me to be the man, instead of us being the men together. Like, it's just so different. There's a competition within, and just to finish the point, there's that like he ain't gonna make no money with, it's just like a thing, and it's not even about money. What about the education? But you're not valuing that, because if I never had nothing, if I get a little bit of something, I think it's everything. And that's the rat race that's being ran time and time again, which is why I had to build Klutch, when really there should have already been a Klutch built for me to grow into and grow out of, maybe, or maybe not.
The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets.
And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October.
A big Week 7 coming up in the NFL. We got Chargers at the Chiefs on Sunday afternoon. I'll be watching that game. And a big Monday Night Football matchup. The 49ers visit the Vikings. You can check the lines on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5 on the NFL. That's code JJ only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. Licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 and over age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. I want to come back to this.
Mm-hmm.
and I want to come back to specifically the agency business.
Mhm.
And you talk about ownership. I have some questions for you on that.
Okay.
But everything you're talking about, I don't want to spoil the book. The book essentially ends with your happenstance meeting with LeBron.
Yes.
From then on, where you're kind of in his inner circle to where you are now,
Mhm.
the thing that I think it sounds like is missing is the mentorship. Did you have a mentor? And as a follow-up to that, are you doing things now for people looking to get into agency, sports representation?
Yeah. Okay. So my mentors were not agents at all. I learned nothing at my previous place that I worked. No one that was whatever. In the agent business, the one guy that I appreciate a lot, and when I first started my business, here's the thing. When I first started the business, I knew what I didn't know. And I went and got someone who was able to fill that gap. And he was great for me, Mark Termini, right? And Mark wasn't this guy that was loud and you wouldn't see him, etc. But he was so detail-oriented. He was so matter-of-fact. He was so professional. And everyone didn't like that. And he didn't need to be buddy-buddy. But for the things that I didn't know or the things that I knew little of, working alongside and with helped me, right? So that's the only agent perspective, right? Everyone else were people in my neighborhood. My Uncle Warren when I was really young. People like Lynn Merritt, who wasn't necessarily in my life every day, but because he understood a different side of a business, he was able to have the conversations. And we've had conversations. In our original conversation, I'm like, man, I'm not trying to hear that. Like I'm doing this, and this. And he's like, no, and he fought through the ups and downs to make, to help us understand, like, no, and I've definitely far exceeded what he ever thought anything would be. And he would say that. But my mentors were people in my neighborhood. People I can go through them, old, young, men, women, but they gave me the game.
So from 2003-ish,
Okay.
Klutch was launched in 2013?
2012.
2012.
Yeah.
And Mark joined you right away? Or he came
Mark joined me about 6 months later.
6 months later.
Yeah.
There's a 9-year gap there. And obviously you mentioned Lynn,
Yeah.
So Lynn was helping you. But outside of him, you're figuring all this stuff out in real time on your own?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so like the Bledsoe deal, where did you get the confidence to basically go against what even other players are saying?
Yeah.
Like, take the money. And you're like, no, hold out. And you ended up being right. But that was basically your first major deal.
Yes. And, we were in a cubby hole, myself, Eric, and then, Mark as well in that case.
Cubby hole?
Yeah. Meaning like it's just us.
Okay.
It's just us. And then
not an actual like cubby hole.
No.
Okay.
And it's just us. And really breaking that off because, Mark and I talked, and then Eric and I talked. Mark, Eric, and I didn't really talk, like that. And because I had the relationship with the player. And so the best thing about Eric Bledsoe is he don't talk. You play with Bled.
I play with him in New
He does not
Orleans.
talk.
Yeah.
He laughs. He laughs all the time. But he's not talking about anything. And so you can't really get a read. And he trusted me. And for him and I to be at that restaurant at the the Arrogant Butcher, I'm sorry. It was the Arrogant Butcher in Phoenix. And for me to sit across that table with him and say to him, we're not taking this money. He had no dad pushing back. A lot of these things helped. There was no friendly fire. his sister and mom, they wasn't trying to play my role. They wasn't trying to be me. They were just his sister and his mom. And in a lot of ways, he benefited from that. And not that, I'm not saying it as if you can't have family involved, but the intent has to be right when family, friends, whoever is involved. Because in this job, this is the only job, especially since I've had my success in the agent space, there's been an influx of agents, right? I made being an agent actually cool. Like, would you guys agree with that?
I'll say that's 70% true.
Okay, right. And I love it, by the way, right? I love it.
No, I agree with you that what you did definitely, I don't know if the words inspiration or inspire, but there's certainly a causal effect, right, to the new influx of agents because of what you did. 100%.
There's a confidence now that,
I mean, hold on a second. This guy shows up. I take it back. I take it back.
Look at the suit.
This guy shows up in a custom Rich Paul tracksuit. He's got, I'm getting a pair of those New Balances.
The New Balances.
The New Balance
like 40
Rich
of them
Paul
in the world.
edition.
Yeah.
Right. Tommy's got on his Clutch Athletics
I got
hoodie.
my
Okay,
hoodie.
yeah.
I
All
got
right,
my hoodie.
you made being agent a cool, bro. All right,
No.
you're courtside, first row last night at Coco Gauff's.
Yeah, I had to.
US Open,
I
I saw you
had
last
to be
night.
there.
But I have a
and support
follow-up.
Coco.
I have a follow-up for both of you guys about this because obviously you know everyone involved too. Don't you think everything that both you, but then also what Mav has done, what Randy has done, like everyone has tried to copy that.
But
It's been the gold standard.
But here's the thing. That's the point I'm trying to make. When I or we do it, instead of them saying, "Hey, do you know my phone doesn't ring with, hey man, can we meet? Can we talk? Is there anything we can do together to help me do this?" Because there's a competition always from across the room. Oh, fuck them. Forget that guy. Forget that, like that's the mentality, but that's the neighborhood. That's the trauma. That's what you get from that place. But if I grew up in, Moreland Hills or Pepper Pike, Ohio, my friends there, let me just tell you, I have a friend. His name is Todd Lebo. Amazing guy, right? He's Jewish. Todd Lebo. When I first started Klutch, Todd Lebo's family owns a company called Majestic Steel, right? They galvanize steel. I learned a little bit about the steel business. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. Todd and I meet at a basketball game. He's home from college. He's the youngest son of his 4 brothers. Dad was a G, by the way, too. Just passed away, but was a G, Dennis. Todd, when finding out that I'm starting my own business, gives me an office in his headquarters of a steel company. It's a different dynamic. He's not in competition with me. He wants to see me do well. He's rooting on every step of the way. When I couldn't afford company floor seats, you know who I had a floor seat with?
Todd.
You know who I had a floor seat with in Chicago? Matt Prisker. You understand what I'm saying? It's a different.
But with some of this dynamic, so take what was happening with Anthony in New Orleans, for example. Like, how do you get both your client, but then also the people around the client to be comfortable with the idea that people are going to not like you? Because you've done that a bunch and it's worked out in their favor, but at the time it's ugly.
Because it's different when you're trying to be signed by an agent. Everyone's pitching and you're the best thing ever, the best thing since sliced bread. They want to hear that, right? Once you get in it and you realize, man, this ain't what I thought it was going to be. And now that pressure of making it or making a lot of money, now you just want the best representation. That's a game changer. See, that's why I actually do better the second time around. When you think about my client list, De'Aaron, Zach, Draymond, AD, KCP, John Wall, Fred VanVleet, Jeremy Grant, Keldon Johnson, Jared Vanderbilt, Jordan Clarkson, all these Colin Sexton, you know, like I could keep going. All these people came. The guys that come with us they're spoiled because they don't know anything different. You play on a team, you've seen like they don't know anything different. And the thing I get is, oh, if Rich can do it, so could I. Right? It's not, oh, Rich is really great at what he do. I would like for him to help us. It's the opposite way around. And I'm not upset about the confidence, but don't discredit the expertise just because someone looks like you, right? Don't discredit that expertise, because if that's the case, if you're going to have that mentality, if you can do it, so can I, and disregard the expertise, then have it about everything. If Mark Zuckerberg can create Facebook, so can you. Go out and do it. If, you know, like that's the mentality, have that about everything, but you don't have that. And that's where I feel like it's an issue. Even with Maverick building Spring Hill, I understand as a partner, I'm not the show. That's not my lead on that, right? So I get updated when it was first starting, et cetera, grow. I get all the updates, but I know how to get in the backseat of a car and ride and just shut up too. You know, hey man, this not my show, okay? I'm just, you know, I want a little piece of the bark. I don't need the whole tree. And that's how you build. You may have the trunk some days. Some days you may just have a little leaf. And I'm fine with either one. And so, like JJ's asking me, I just stay consistent, bro. Like I'm not changing who I am and what I do and how I do it for no amount of money or nobody. I just had this conversation with a young man's dad that his son is really good and has the potential to be really good. But what does that actually mean? And people don't understand this, and I'm going to say this. The better you are, the more infrastructure you need. In the sports business, people feel like the better you are, the less you need. That's backwards. As your company grows, as this podcast grows, and you guys get hotter and hotter, you got to get more people, more production, more of this, bigger
trying
studio.
To do it right now.
This is my point.
Yeah.
But if you the number one pick, in your mind, you feels like what? Especially if you have somebody that's entitled to you and they can make you do things or decide things for you, they feel like they don't need anybody.
Do you have a blueprint for that? This is a serious question. You're talking about the infrastructure of a player, and I think back to some teammates. I think about my own infrastructure and how that evolved over my career. And then I think about some young guys that were really good that I felt like, were my teammates. I'm like, you don't really have any infrastructure.
Nothing.
And I could try to help them, but, you got to be willing to commit to it. Then I think about a guy like CP who has like such a multi-layered infrastructure to his day-to-day life and his ability to work and train and be great in season, all the stuff, right? So do you communicate some level of a blueprint to your players?
Yes.
For infrastructure, like you need this, you need this, you need this. I can help you get these 3 things, these 4 things.
Well, we provide it. Number one, we provide it. In addition to that, there's some things that we can't provide that you have to deem valuable to you and be willing to actually pay for. You have to pay for expertise. That don't come for free, right? When you talk about CP, if you talk about whomever, infrastructure matters, man. And so, but here's the thing. If you're only basing it on the finance of something, then you're not going to see the value. If you don't understand how to scale, the reason why I'm in this position now is because I scaled properly. The agents, especially the ones that came before me, they never cared to build a business. They never cared to have a real office. They never cared to have infrastructure. They never cared to future-proof the business. They didn't care to have different verticals. They didn't even know what that was. They had a fax machine and a desk in the basement of their house in the suburb, and they made the money year after year. But they didn't build a business. Now all of a sudden, you see private equity getting in. Now all of a sudden, you see the other boutique agents going to different places now because now more than ever, they really need the help. We knew that in 2006. But back then, no one was thinking about building a business. So when I got in it, I thought about building a business. You know what? People don't know this. Rob Pelinka and I had a real conversation about working together right before he took the Lakers job. And the one thing Rob said to me that he wished he had done was scale properly.
And Rob was with Arn. And
prior to.
And then left. Yeah.
But I took that to heart. And I wasn't so into myself that I didn't listen to him.
Right.
I didn't see him as competition. You get what I'm saying? Even though every year, before he left, we were trying to get Jason Tatum and trying to get Dennis Smith Jr. and trying to, that's our business. That's part of it. But so is it when all these CMOs and CEOs compete right now in the marketplace with companies they have. But when they go to the Sun Valley Conference, they're collaborating, they're communicating, they're talking. In my neighborhood, going back to the book, there's no communicating. There's kill.
How do you deal with the pocket watching, like the publicness of everything, where it's like you got two clients, they both want this, they see what each other's getting, and so you have to deal with both of them.
Straight up. Talk to Draymond. I tell him, listen, Dre, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And you know what the beauty of this thing is? Getting guys like a Draymond, guys like an Anthony Davis, guys like De'Aaron and Zach. I'm naming these guys because they came from other places. Even John. When I sit down with these guys, it's literally, we're going through the plan and it's full trust. It's not even a blink of distrust. Even from may she rest in peace, John's mom. Full trust. AD's dad. They're not in the way. I tell all families, and they'll tell you, I tell them, it's like Granny's kitchen. On Sunday, when Granny get in that kitchen at 9 a.m. and start prepping that food, you gotta remember, Granny's getting in the kitchen. She gonna put the food on. She's leaving the house with the food on, going to church, right? You better not touch that stove. Don't even go in the kitchen, period. She's coming back from church and finish cooking. You know how crazy that is to be able to do that. And you know how disciplined you have to be and how much trust she has to have in you. And you also know better, right? And so I say the same thing. When I'm in the kitchen with my team and I don't need nobody in my kitchen. Just my kitchen. Just trust it. And when I ate that food at 4:00, seasoned properly, tastes great, and she's cooking from church, but I trust her,
Rich sometimes is cooking from a yacht.
And let me tell you about that, JJ. I've missed I swear to you, if you see LJ, any of them, Maverick, they plan the boat trips without me. You know why? Because they know I'm not going. It's free agency. I'm not going anywhere.
Can you explain the 1201 every single one of your clients signs 30 seconds after free agency starts?
No, I can't explain that. I know it's announced. I don't know about being signed. It's announced.
It's announced.
Yeah.
Transition into something that I was going to ask you about because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I had Andre Iguodala on the podcast yesterday, and he said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, the players want to be owners. They want what the owners have, which is wealth and some level of anonymity. They don't want to fucking have to have security with them and they ask for autographs and pictures all the time, right? They want the wealth and they want the access.
Yeah.
They also want the anonymity and they want the ownership. And the owners all want to be players. And you mentioned the word ego earlier. I think it's the ego, whether it's an agent, front office, ownership, coaches, players. It's the biggest variable in a team sport. It's the biggest variable, to be honest with you, in the league. In the league. So I was
100%.
I was with Ben Winston last night, told him you were coming on the pod.
Man.
And he said, ask Rich, where is the power in sports? Because it gets thrown around all the time now. It's a players' league. It's a player. Oh, player empowerment. It's gone too far. Where's the power in sports?
Man.
And if it's not in one place, what do you think the breakdown is?
So, from a player's perspective, I think the power in sports is layered, right? As a player, how do I maintain my power? Well, it starts with your play. That's number one, right? And then coming out of your play or prior to your play, it starts with your approach. It's your approach, your play, then your professionalism. That equals your power, because if I have a guy whose approach is right, who's playing at that level, and is professional, I got all the power in the world. And the owners, they're going to respect and accept and enhance that power, right? So the players feel like, and in some, I mean, I didn't hear it, I have to hear the pod, but just looking at the landscape of the league today, nobody in the league, well, very few guys in the league actually has the power to move the needle and have impact in things. But because you may be making max money, you feel like you do. And we all know that that is not true. That's why I hate that word max, because it gives you this entitlement. And that's where you lose it all. Between that entitlement and your ego, you start, and it really stunts the growth of you professionally.
When that happens
Mm-hmm.
on a large scale, and by a large scale, I don't mean 450 players. Let's call it a handful. Not an anomaly. Not a once every 3 year thing.
Mm-hmm.
When that happened, and I'm not saying Anthony was like this, but Anthony asking out, Kawhi asking out, James now, Dame. These are all guys, max guys, right?
Right. But all different scenarios.
Very different scenarios.
Yes.
I want to point that out. Anthony and Kawhi didn't sign their super maxes, and they basically got traded a year before they hit free agency. But, and by the way, they have every right, I think, to ask for a trade. I'm not suggesting that. But when this happens now consistently, is it bad for the league? Maybe is it bad for the perception of the league?
Yeah, the perception, because I can't necessarily say it's bad for the league, because in that case, then you have to flip the coin and say, well, is it bad for the league to trade a player while he's asleep? Because the players don't get to choose, right? When they sign a contract, unless you have a no trade clause or whatnot, or unless you're in the last year of your deal or what, like, they don't get to choose. And so I just think every situation is different. Like in Anthony's case, he had no business signing a 5-year deal to begin with. Because at that time, what did the team show you that warranted them to have you committed for 5 years? But just going back to the ego, and it's going back to the agent, right? The agent's job, for me as an agent, and I'm in a different position because my life isn't totally dependent of a commission, right? So I have the ability, and I did this prior to, by the way. When I started the company, my focus was always to do what's best for the client. That was our thing. That's actually one of our things internally that we built the business on. Always do what's best for the client. Even if I didn't make any money, or we didn't make any money as a company, I'm not signing Anthony Davis to a 5-year deal at that time. They're losing every year. Why would? But they do, or they did. Why? Because that commission is committed to you. So now the money has taken the strategy out of it. People don't, when LJ came back to Cleveland, I was making no money. All my existing contracts were somewhere else: Bled, Tristan, Corey. And when LeBron came to Cleveland, I got 3 people working, maybe 2, actually working on payroll. And I got the ability to sign a max contract 4 years committed at 4% coming to me. Despite the haters own the business, this and that, that's all false. But you get what I'm saying? I had to deal with that back then. I don't have to deal with that now. But back then, I had to deal with that. But when you think, if I'm thinking about me, I try to convince him to do a 4-year deal. But if I'm thinking about him, and again,
1 + 1. Yeah.
This is what we did. Because, we huddled up internally, and then I had to go have the conversation with him why we want to do this and why it made sense. There's nobody else in the room. There's nobody. It's not because I'm his boy. He understands it. And he trusts it. And so, this makes sense. Okay, this is what's happening. Boom, 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 boom. This is why we're doing this. But Rich Kleiman was okay with calling me and saying, hey, Rich, and we're friends. Hey, Rich, why did this? Here's why. Okay, cool. You get what I'm saying? Like, and
you're talking about with how they structured Kevin's deals in Golden State.
But that's how it should go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how it should go. Now, I don't.
It's not right for every player. Let's be clear on that. It's those type of contracts are right for Kevin Durant and LeBron
most
James.
Most players should not do that.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a comment about power. Mm-hmm. I think to some degree there's levers, and every situation is different.
Yeah.
Where, and by levers I mean leverage, right? So those levers can shift through a player's career, a team, the cycle they're on, ownership. There's a new owner. It comes with coaching contracts, right? Leverage is kind of everything, and it cycles back and forth. And I think to some degree, there are levers that stay pretty static in terms of power, in terms of who has the power in the NBA.
Yeah.
Here's my point. Ownership obviously has some power. Front offices, coaching staff, they have some power. Players have some power. We all kind of share in the power.
Yes.
I think what gets disruptive is when the ego creates the illusion of more power than it exists in reality.
You're absolutely right. And again, that goes for 98% of the players in our league. It's more that than actual power. There's only about 2% of players in our league that actually have power. And then you have to really elaborate on that. What does that actually mean? Does that mean I could just get up and do whatever I want to do when I want to do it? No.
But here's the thing. For those players, they still have to do those 3 things you talked about.
Yeah.
They still have to approach it the right way. They still have to play at a high level.
Yes.
And they still have to be a pro.
Yes. No matter who you are, that's where you should start.
Look, there's 2 players to me. It's Bron and Steph. And when we talk about those 3 things, both those guys do it all the time. They're the most consistent motherfuckers there are.
All the time. And that's why when I actually did months ago, when I did the Gill, what I said, I wasn't trying to slight Steph. That wasn't my thing. I had nobody else to compare to, right? If we were having a bubble conversation.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
It is. I say it all the time. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, and Steph knows that because I talked to Steph, whatever. But I wasn't trying to slight him. I was just saying in terms of how the different superstars are viewed. And that's the other thing in our league. There's very few superstars, right? But people don't want to have that conversation. But there are. And again, when we were talking about the shoe deals and things like that, it's just different, man. And I think more and more players have to be educated, and they should lead with that, and they should trust that and want that, and you know what? Be willing to pay for that. And I'm not saying that from a self-serving perspective. I don't want nothing for less than.
At what point in and you talk about just sort of your learning on the fly in the book a lot in terms of a lot of different parts of life. At what point in your career did you feel like you started to understand this well?
Well, it went in stages, and again, going back to the book, when I first learned how to shoot dice, right? My dad said to me, son, if you ever get laid off, these are going to be the tools that get you through till you get your next job. You had a pair of dice in one hand and a deck of cards in the other hand, right? Because in my neighborhood, there's no careers. There's no 401ks. There's hustles. You either hustle, you either have a job, or you're a gangster. You know, like that's what it was. And so he was trying to prepare me to get from, and I equate that to me learning how to shoot dice and deciding which way I wanted to go and being able to adapt. If we're playing cards, we're playing cards. We're shooting dice, we're shooting dice. But my approach to shooting dice was the same as JJ's approach to shooting his jump shot. I practiced every day, home from school, every day, boom, before I go to bed. You'd be surprised. If you ever see me shuffle a deck of cards, I can work at the win with no problem. Like it, you know? And so then I when I got into the agent business, when I first started, I was always a person that understood and loved sports. I watched everything, cricket. I watched every type of sport. And then I had the ability to align with the guys on my team or other team. I played at a school called Cleveland Benedictine. We were state champions. I was by far not the best player on the team. We were ranked 21 in the country one year. We won back-to-back state championships. My senior year, we lost. Just got complacent, got too cocky a little bit, and lost to a team we probably should have beat by 20. But the best players rock with me. And so I had this ability to tell people where I thought they fit at the collegiate level. Oliver Purnell's at Clemson. He coaches like this. Bobby Knight's at here. You know, Boeheim's here. Whatever the case may be. Dean Smith was there back then. It was, it was just a different, but I had the ability, and I'll never forget there was this kid named Bruce Story. Bruce was cold, 6'3", had a great pace, handle, he just had a great, I say this all the time. I wish Brew was in the position now and I was in my position now, because I guarantee you he would have been a pro. Because and back then we didn't know, and he was a freshman. And here's the thing, he was a freshman and he came on the team and took my minutes, right? I'm like, you know what? He's actually better than me, so that's fine. I have no problem with that, because when we leave out this locker room, I know I'm going to be the man with the leather jacket I got on. I got a bankroll in my pocket. Now this is my game. I let them play on the court, and I played off the court. This is my mentality. I'm just trying to shape it to where I don't get in this space where I feel like I failed, right? And I was a team guy. I helped guys get better in practice. When I was able to play, I played. And by the way, we beat Mike Gansey for his. He played for. I think he played for Olmsted Falls. Every time I see him, I say that, and I'm gonna say it on the air so he can get mad and call me. And Mike was a hell of a player.
Mike was a hell of a player.
Yeah, Mike was a hell of a player, but we beat him. And so when I first started out recruiting guys, a lot of it was me being them. I knew I wasn't as good as them, but I knew what it was like to be a player. And so that was our original connection. And then I had to learn what's important to them and why. And then I had to learn the other side of the business, on the business side, in terms of, okay, well, how do teams actually think, and what do they actually look for? And then I had to learn the importance of, everyone wants to be seen with the president or the GM or the owner. That's wrong. You got to start way down. And when I say down, not discrediting anybody, but you come to find out it's the scout. You gotta understand that scouting team, or at least have one or two. The player development person on the team, they're the ones spending the time with the players every day. What do they look for? Then, there may be 4 people in the front office that's not the GM, but they're giving all the information to the GM. The GM may not even see a player play, but twice. You know, they may watch a little film. So I had to learn all those different intricacies. And then at the same time, it was the same way when I worked at Nike, I learned a lot just in terms of how they thought and what made them tier a player in a certain tier in terms of how they're going to allocate the funds. Because people think that shoe deals come from, it's a sports marketing budget. And so I had to learn that aspect of it too. And the beauty of it is, going back to the book, again, all those shoes and understanding what was cool and all that shopping and hanging and gambling and hustling to go and buy these things. When I got in those rooms, it put me so far ahead because I knew what was cool. I knew the product. I knew all the product. And so sitting in this room, and I'm here with the big wigs, right? These are the decision makers of the entire company. And I'm running down all these products from 92, 93, 94. They're like, what the? You get what I'm saying? The average person who graduated college and went and worked at these shoe companies, they don't know that. They never had to do that. And so it gave me a different value in those rooms.
I want to ask you a couple questions about Bron that I've actually wanted to ask you for a long time. But before I do that, what you're just talking about, in the book, every chapter has a rule. Mm-hmm. And there's a chapter towards the end, the rule is star in your role. It's something I talk about all the time when I talk about players. And it's basically you going down to Atlanta, working for a retailer, working in the stock room.
Andy Hyman.
Yes, Andy. I was going to say Andy. And it's how you started this business with the throwback jerseys, and it's ultimately how you met LeBron.
Yes.
In an airport, you're wearing a Warren Moon jersey. He asks you where you got the jersey. You guys strike up a friendship. You'd like to think the rest is history. I know that it's not. There's, 22 years of work and relationship building and all that stuff. With LeBron, early on, when you look back, you guys were young men then. Was there something that you saw in him that gave you confidence that he could handle the enormous expectations and the enormous pressure of being, in Sports Illustrated's words, the chosen one? Not the player, not the talent and the physical ability. Was there something you saw in him that you said, I think he's going to be all right with this pressure and expectation?
Yeah, well, the pressure, the expectation, again, it started over as he became more accomplished. So initially, I would say yes. And the reason why, the superstardom, the selling out, they had to move his high school games to college and arenas. He's selling out. He was, at that time, he was selling more tickets than the Cavs. He was in high school. His high school game against Warrensville Heights, there were 20,000 people there. The Cavs were averaging like maybe 11,000, that year. But the reason why I say yes is because, and I dissect this a little bit different. He's from Akron, Ohio. You ever been to Akron? There isn't much there, right? So you don't have a ton of options. But what that does is it allows you to be grounded. And because he was grounded, it allowed him to actually have patience in terms of his maturation process of celebrity and success. And so there was no rush to be something that I wasn't. And because of that, it allowed him to continue to strengthen the foundation of himself as a person and as a player. In addition to that, luckily for him, as he aligned people, and I was the last one to the table, but as he aligned people around him, there was no yes men, and there was nobody in it for them. Very, extremely lucky in that regard because very few athletes have that around them. No yes men and nobody in it for them.
But ultimately, I want to point this out. I know what you're saying. Ultimately, everyone in that room or at that table benefited.
Of course.
From LeBron's greatness, right?
Yeah, of course. But that wasn't their initial approach or intent, right? Because for me, I was actually in a different position. I had to come down because in my neighborhood, I'm
Oh, it's in the book. Yeah.
So I had to star my role differently, right? He looked up to Maverick. Maverick played on his, you're underclassman, senior. That's how it works, right? Even though he was a better player, it don't matter. And so in Randy's case, again, that trust is built because you can count on him. Prompt, professional, right? And so now when you're looking at it through this lens, you start to see how things start to formulate. And again, I didn't have a role, JJ. I didn't have a role. I didn't have anything. There was a one-lane highway, right? So it went from us hanging and still with no role. I didn't make it about me. I remember we were in Chicago and, he was not even in the pros yet. People were asking for autographs or whatnot. And just was tired of signing autographs. And the kid, he was like, And I was like, you should sign an autograph, man. I'm tired, blah, blah. I said, man, one day they're not going to want your autograph. And you never know with that. Now, this is a big risk because there's no draft. I'm not in anything. I'm not, but it's what was right.
Yeah.
And so he ended up signing an autograph and et cetera. But
I just want to. There's not going to be a day where someone doesn't want LeBron's autograph.
No. But you got to remember. But you got to remember. He's 18 years old.
You're spot on. Then I'm just saying, like, it's funny looking back now.
Yeah, now it's down. Yeah, but back then,
97. Be like, I need Bron to sign this throwback Lakers 2021-2022 jersey.
But it was the evolution.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm saying: if I make it about me, if I'm playing a money grab and trying to do whatever, I never get to that. People don't understand.
We had to build trust.
Yeah. But I didn't become his agent until 9 years later. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like 9 years. So I had 9 years in addition to everything in this book. So when you take everything in the book, and then 9 more years on top of that in this world, navigating this business, I didn't get an opportunity. I didn't get the opportunity I got because I'm his friend or I'm his brother or cousin or sister or whatever. That wasn't the case. I got the opportunity that I got because he watched me sacrifice and commit and be passionate about it. And there's all the things that the bear down, the chapter, when I'm talking about bear down, when I'm shooting the 4, that's why I never celebrate. I haven't celebrated one deal yet. I'm bearing down because I know, right? And so I don't get, and by the way, the lucky aspect of it, I'm so lucky to have grown up in my dad's store. Right? I'm so lucky to have grown up in my environment to teach me things that help me to this day. And as a man, just me and you, us three as men, take status away, take all that type of stuff away. I can stand in front of anybody in the world as a man's man. That means more to me than anything, right? The layman's term in that is basic thing, right? You're in jail because this type of stuff happens. You go to jail. I now have to take money to your wife or to your girl for the kids, school clothes. She come to visit you, commissary, your box, all that type of stuff. Well, when she opened the door, first time I go, she frying chicken, whatever. Cool. By the 5th time I go, She got jeans on, sweater on, hoodie on, whatever. By the 5th, 6th time I go, she got just a t-shirt on. As a man, the integrity in you as a man, that matters. That temptation matters. And that's no different than being in my situation now as an agent and lying to you to do what's best for me so I make money.
Yeah. I think what's remarkable about all of this, what you're talking about, and going back to starring in your role, is that it took, so you starred in your role for a long time.
Yeah.
Before you ever got a bigger role to star in.
Way before. I was an extra. I was an extra.
Yeah. No, I think that's remarkable. I just want to make a it's more of a comment than a question. I've always found it fascinating. LeBron, I mean, you can say what you want about the negativity and the scrutiny that he's faced. And really the decision was probably the most negative thing that has happened in his career. Whatever. I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
But it's remarkable to me. He's had this entire career in the public spotlight since he was a teenager. And by and large, he's avoided controversy. And you said something on Gil's podcast as it relates to the player, not necessarily the career in its entirety, but the player, just the scrutiny that he's faced versus the scrutiny that Jordan's faced. I'm not here to debate that at all.
Please.
No. I'm not here to debate the MJ LeBron
I'm
thing.
exhausted.
What I would say is it's a point I bring up a lot, and I want to sort of just like go a little bit deeper with a point I bring up a lot about today's generation of players and playing in the First Take era, the 24/7 news debate show era, NBA Twitter, the constant scrutiny. Our generation of player, led by LeBron, has faced more constant scrutiny than any other generation. And it's not to say that other generations didn't face scrutiny. Jordan certainly faced scrutiny early on in his career. The narrative around him. Here's the thing: it lived in print. It lived on talk radio. If you were
listening,
it wasn't eternalized.
No,
on the interwebs. It wasn't eternalized in a Twitter conversation or an IG video. Like these on a YouTube. Think about YouTube right now and where fans get their information from and where they find their narratives about players. So we've lived all that. A byproduct of this, of not going through that, and I deal with this now, is anytime you say anything negative or anything questioning any other era or any other player, there's this immediate backlash.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I think this is because I think every era, the players to a degree have been canonized, meaning it's the gospel. Larry Bird, Wilt Chamberlain, has been said about those players for decades is the gospel. Yeah. If you ever question that, it's disrespect.
You're wrong. It's just
I said on First Take, Larry Bird, top 10 player of all time, one of the greatest shooters of all time. Mad Dog, I respectfully disagree. He's not a top 5 3-point shooter of all time. There's no logical way you can make that argument.
Yeah, and Mad Dog is stuck in.
And then all of a sudden, like all the old heads, I'm disrespecting Larry Bird. Yeah. No, I didn't.
He's just stuck in time.
He's unequivocally a top 10 player. What happens to today's generation of player who has lived through this 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Like, we're not getting canonized because these stupid fucking narratives exist about all of us.
You know what? And that's the danger in that is there's going to be no more icons. The icon is gone, right? That legend of something is gone because it's been saturated. It's literally been saturated by everything from debate shows to people wanting to just get clicks and views on social media, and negativity sells, obviously, and people want to hear about that and debate that. But what happens is you're not going to ever have that anymore because there's too many opinions, number one, in addition to not enough knowledge and And then when you add that on top of the gamesmanship and the business aspect of it, to where someone can't say how they truly feel, especially on a TV or on a pod, because that's not what people want to hear. And so now people eat that, right? You digest that goes into your psyche of the casual fan or listener, et cetera. And then now that becomes the barbershop talk. When the barbershop talk was normally dictated by you and I both looking in the plain dealer at the box score and also watching the game that we watched last night and us having that favorite player. That created the thing. Now we added a referee to that on a talk show every morning to decide, like that's just, that's what it is, and it's tough. And again, going back to that conversation, the point I was trying to make is, and everybody's, I'm LeBron's biggest critic, trust me. It wasn't about that. It was just that people say, well, Michael would have never did that. Well, who says we wanted to do everything that Michael did? That's no slight to Michael, but that's why his name is Michael and his name is LeBron. Like, I'm not here to do everything like somebody else did it. It's okay for me to take what they did well, and if I can apply that to myself and be successful going forward, great. But don't discredit me because I didn't stay with a team for 20 years. Well, everybody's, everybody's journey is different. My grandmother had 12 kids. My mom had 3. Is she less of a woman because of that? Like what are we talking about? It's not a slight to but it's just that thing of that. And then going back to the shows, no offense to Tommy, but when we were talking about it, I was like, he had the hoodie on. He's like, man, I don't want people to say something about something because he didn't really understand. And I understand it. That's him from a business perspective because he has to go out and get players from other agents or whatever. And then now the agent see him with the stuff on and he gives them shit about it. Small-minded, very small-minded, right? Well, that's no different than going on TV and you're not afraid to say what's real because you don't care to be anybody's friend. But someone else may be afraid to say what's real because that text or that ability to communicate with somebody, whether it's one day or 100 days in between, makes them feel a certain way.
Oh, Stephen A. and I get text literally in real time from people.
I'm sure. And sometimes it's probably me.
I think you did text me one time, but it wasn't really.
But I'm never going to text you about something.
No. The way, yeah. But players, agents, whatever. And then again, the other thing about that too is players are way too in stuff today. Like
too online.
For a player to be texting you about something about it's too much.
Yeah.
You think it's gotten worse?
Well, it's gotten worse, Tommy, but the is like I get guys even I'll have trainers of teams I played for.
Yeah.
I'll be on First Take and they'll send me a picture of me on the television and they're in the training room with the guys before practice.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck are y'all watching this? I shouldn't say that. I don't want to disrespect ESPN.
It's gonna be like, cut that.
No, I mean this, and I'll say this to ESPN. How is that healthy to watch that before a practice?
Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you how, because that goes to show you the mentality. We live in a society where if you post a picture and you don't get enough likes, they take it down. That's the generation. So why wouldn't they be watching? Why wouldn't they care about things? They care more about the tunnel and how they look coming through the tunnel.
Oh, don't get me started on this, Rich.
I'm just saying.
He's been ranting about this for years.
Then the film session. Right? So now when I get home, from practice, I'm laying out outfits because of my brand. But your brand only lives in your world. Go to Istanbul and see if somebody knows you. They don't. They don't. It's only a few guys. You get what I'm saying? And so that's the thing. And so it's when you went back to power and we talked about your approach and then the play. Listen, man, if I have the ability, like if you were coming out of Duke right now and I said to you, JJ, on a very low level, at the worst case scenario, you should make $300 million in your career. But in order to do that, you have to be able to do this, and this, and we got to stay there, whatever. At best case scenario, you may make $800 million in your career. Could you imagine, like, why would I focus on anything else?
Anything else?
There's not a brand that can pay you that. There's not an investment that's going to pay you that. You know, this whole idea of being fake smart, like, bro, I never want to be the smartest guy in the room. I don't care to be. Actually, I would like it the other way around. Coming out of there. Now, I can debate all day long, but I'm just saying that's different things. But this goes into why I'm trying to explain to you what they're starting to care about now.
Well, to your point, and I think we can kind of wrap up here. To your point, and this kind of goes into everything we've talked about. The reality is, with today's contracts, nothing else should matter. Because if you have the right approach, and the approach is the preparation, all the stuff that goes into it, you perform at a high level consistently.
Yeah.
And you're not a dickhead.
You should be okay.
You're going to make $500 million if you're a good player.
Yes.
Like
Yes, but let me tell you why it should matter.
The other stuff should matter?
No, I'm sorry. Let me tell you what the approach should actually be during this time. And it goes the same for NIL, which I have a love-hate relationship with NIL. I love it for all those. I love the idea of name, image, and likeness, and you be able to make money from that. I hate the idea of this is going to get me rich while I'm in school and I can do this and floss on the thing and do the thing, right? And drive a Benz to college and ride a bike. You're not going anywhere. Most big colleges, the town is like 3 miles.
You do car.
And there's a sick on-campus bus system.
Right, and you're pulling up to what? Subway? Like Jersey Mike's? We got to relax with all that. It's just, but what you should be doing from an NIL perspective and in your early years of earning is investing in infrastructure. Spending less, learning more, diversifying, and every 3 years, get a better understanding. Yeah. So by the time, think about this. If you would have done that coming right out, think about what you know now. If what you know now you apply in your rookie year, or you had somebody helping you understand that, you would have, by the way, you would have made $1 gazillion at Duke. Oh, God. Oh.
He's mentioned before.
Opportunity.
I think he's aware.
I've done all right for myself.
You've done great. You've done great, but I'm just saying. I mean, NIL at Duke, JJ Redick. I mean,
those last 2 years would have been
also the
lucrative.
3-point shooting generation changing.
Yeah.
I missed it by like 5 years.
You left a little bit on the table.
Did, but you made up towards the end. You definitely squeezed for sure.
The last 4 innings really paid out well.
But that's the thing, like, for me, and I try to help this is not the sexy conversation. And I don't want to sound like a vitamin all the time, but it's just of so much importance because you get to be 35 and it's done. Maybe, not even 35. 28, 29, 30.
35 is
you've done
Lucky.
really
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Like you've done
35,
really well.
36,
I just say, and
Yeah.
it's tough, bro. So,
So, I want to wrap with this to get back to the book. Lucky me. And I've been lucky to drive around with you in Cleveland in your neighborhood, so I've seen it.
yeah.
Do you feel like this thing we're talking about with social media, with everything like that, like no one there cares about Instagram? You know what I mean? It's a thing where it's like you grew up where you were in survival mode. And so that has actually given you a leg up. And we've talked about this in this conversation a little bit, but it's given you a leg up over your competition in a way where you had a lot of people who had a lot handed to them and you had nothing handed to them. And so when you have your perspective now, as you're looking for your Central Park apartment and your Beverly
that was
Hills,
a dream of mine.
and as you're looking at your Beverly Hills house, do you still look back? You still look back at that?
You think he's in town to do our podcast, man? He's here to sit courtside at the US Open and to go look at apartments at 15 Central
Park. It's such a great thing that y'all can use this part. It's so great. But no, here's the thing. Like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Not having these things allow you to actually be molded. You know, because nowadays with social media and things and what you see, kids see what they deem to be successful, but they don't realize Instagram is the new TV show. It's the new movie. Everyone's acting. Everyone's acting.
It's a bar.
You know?
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy's not Axel Foley. You know, he's really Eddie Murphy. But he's been everybody from Dr. Dolittle to Axel to Reggie Hammond, you know, and so that's what these kids today don't understand. And I talk to my own kids about this. Don't be tricked by that. It allowed me to be molded. It allowed me to be willing to listen, because now when you see Instagram, going back to the book, Slim, who used to walk me to school every day, right? Slim Black or Black Steve and all these people who I grew up around, Robbie Dobb and all these different people who I grew up around when I was young. There's no way, if I have Instagram and buy into that I get educated how I did from these people, because as they're talking to me, they're down on their luck at this time. Instagram makes you judge somebody from their appearance, not from their experience. And you miss that nourishment that they're giving you. So I was able to get the nourishment through conversation and them giving me an example of what their life used to be and the experience they went through and things they did right and wrong that has now got them in this position. You miss that. So now if I only see the highlights of everybody, how can I really evaluate the player? You can't. And so, again, I'm extremely lucky for that aspect of it.
Rich, this has been a fascinating conversation. We appreciate the
fun,
time.
guys.
This was
Thanks.
a lot of fun.
2 years in the making.
Yeah,
It's
we
great.
finally got it done.
You know,
Rich's book, Lucky Me, is out now.
It's out, yeah. And, you know, and it's out. And I honestly say, man, I'm glad I was able to do this. You know, my dad, my mom, as you guys read the book, I give it all. I give it all. The ups and downs, the all the things I had to do to survive. Like this is a book of experiences and things that I had to do to survive, and things that I'm passionate about. Some things I'm not necessarily glorifying it, but I'm appreciative that I actually went through it, because it allows me to appreciate who I am today in the position I sit in, and also my ability to pay it forward.
Love it. We appreciate it, Rich.
Thank you.
Okay, Rich, last question. The Roback question. Reminder to our viewers that you can use code OLD on Roback.com for 20% off your first purchase. That's RHOBACK.com. Code OLD. You guys know I wear the gear all the time. Love the performance hoodies. Rich, what is the best card game story you have?
Well, There's several, but I'll give you this one. So the Pistons are playing the Cavs in the playoffs. We have a card game. And again, the Pistons are playing the Cavs in the playoffs.
What year is this?
06 or 07. We can fact check that, but it was in the moment. We say we're going to play cards. We end up having 2 card games in one area, and it's the Pistons and the Cavs together. They have to play each other. It's Chauncey, it's Rip, it's Tayshaun, and I'm sitting here, I'm saying to myself, this is crazy. Like, we're in the playoffs. Everybody. But it's Boo-Ray, it's card. Like, and at the same time, I'm saying to myself, Rich, lock in. This is your playoffs. This is your Eastern Conference fucking finals. You are the lowest man of lowest men or the totem pole. Lock in. Don't take no chances. Don't try to be too cute. Don't pull up for the 3 on a 1-on-none fast break, because these guys got a lot and going to get a lot more. You, on the other hand, you need it. And so it was a very good day for me.
How much did you come out on top?
Probably a small property. Yeah.
Do you have
I used to hear those Pistons cards game. Like,
hey, listen,
we had
man,
we had heavy action on the Clippers.
Oh, y'all had heavy action on the Clippers.
But no, I mean, nothing compared to these
I'm gonna
guys.
tell you, the heaviest action I've had was with Gilbert Arenas, Larry Hughes. Damn, who was in that game? Drew Gooden, Gilbert, Larry, Drew. I want to say D. Jones. Man, and we were playing at Larry's house. Larry had either bought, I think he bought the house from Oak. Oak had built the house, and Larry bought it from Oak. And we ended up playing at Larry's house. I never forget this. We were anteing 2,000 a man playing Boo-Ray.
Things can get out of hand quickly.
The minute, you know how crazy that is? And I'm not in the NBA. I'm not. The minimum pot is 10,000. That's the minimum.
Right. So I'm gonna break this down for the viewers real quick.
Yeah.
If you ante, 5 guys ante $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
The pot is 10,000.
Yes.
Let's say you play one hand and it's a 2-2-1, i.e., nobody wins the pot. Everybody re-antes.
Now
pot is now 20,000.
Yes.
Let's say the next one, 4 people stay in. We got another 2-2-1, plus we got a boo. Pot is now 60,000.
60,000, yes.
Let's say somebody wins the next pot, but someone gets booed.
Or 2 people get booed.
2 people get booed. Now the pot is 126,000.
Yes, yes.
That's how the pot grows in
That's
Boo-Ray.
how the pot grows in Boo-Ray. And
so a $2,000 ante
is insane. It's
in five games can turn into $126,000 very easily.
It's insane. And not only is it insane, I have to be the craziest guy in the world.
What am I doing here?
I think Larry had got 82. Gilbert, they all, it's me. But I'm such a gambler. I'm like on.
Who won?
Larry was pretty lucky. He was a good player. They all were pretty good players. I want to say Larry won a little bit that night. And Gilbert, he probably won too, but he always lied about not whether
he's one of those guys. I know those guys.
Do you have a top 5?
But Gilbert wouldn't. He would. I take that back. Gilbert would laugh and run off and put it in your face how much he actually won. Oh, he loved it. Gilbert, he
That
loved it.
That sounds like Gil.
Yeah, he used to literally get off his bus, get to the Ritz, and come right to our apartment. We play all night, and when Maverick and I lived together at the Reserve. But I think I might have won a little bit, but not like I was. That's a real thing. I was hoping to clean the house, but that didn't happen that night.
You have a top 5 Boo-Ray players in the league?
Ooh, my top 5 Boo-Ray player. Well, he's a coach now, so don't use this against him. T. Lue, yes. T. Lue. Russ is pretty good. But the thing about Russ is he is going to take 5 every time.
He's an aggressive player.
He does not care. But he wins sometimes, Man, LJ would be in there. I'm just trying to think of everybody I played with. James I played with. But James just, James, he just got so much money. He just he disrespected my bankroll one time and
that's the thing now.
We laugh about that now. This was years ago. I'm like, James, you can't.
You're right, though.
Yeah.
Can I just say something real quick? You're right. Like, some of these motherfuckers have so much money
they just
stay in every game, and it ruins the flow of the game.
It's hard to. I played with Fred VanVleet the other day. He was pretty good. It was my first time playing with Fred. He was a very distinguished player, quiet, but it's been several. Man, Larry Hughes was a good player. D. Jones is probably one of the funnest guys to play with. And Perk, like, if you want the fun game, give me D. Jones and Perk. They the funniest. If you want the serious game where you really got to lock in, yeah, I mean, I can name several people, but I'm just trying to think through all it. Taking the money aside, like it's tough because everybody plays a different way. But another game we had was in Athens, Greece, had a card game. I mean, AI. This was the crate. We played literally all night to the next morning. I won big, really big. I had to give my money to Aunt Glo coming through the customs.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But no, it's fun. I mean, it's all in fun. I love to play. I played spades with MJ one time. This is when I was really young. I played spades with MJ at the Bacara when we were working his camp. His cousin played.
This was in Santa Barbara?
In Santa Barbara. This was 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just love to play. And look, we used to have these guts games where we first started hanging out. I saw Tom Brady the other day at this AP event, and we were talking about it. He's like, man, we haven't seen each other. I was like, yeah, Tom, last time we really hung out was we had this game. And, I was just always, when you think about the gambling aspect, just going back to the book, I never forget this. I will end it on this. It was the 2004 All-Star Weekend. And we go to see Z. And they're playing cards. So when we get there, it's Jay, it's, Kevin Lyles, it's Will Smith, Tom Brady, A-Rod, Juan. It's a table, Kaiser. It's a real table, right? And so I'm itching. I want to play. I really want to play. And something happened and that's the thing about gambling. No matter your age, no matter your stature, if they know you're serious, you got a seat at the table. And so they gave me a seat at the table. And it was like fours was wild or something. Jay always called fours wild. And I think I might have been on what they call first base. I knock, and I'm, and they like, and that was kind of like at that circle, that was kind of like my entry. At that circle, I end up winning that hand, won a little bit of money, but that was like at that circle. So now you start playing, and you can say let's play anything with me. I mean, anything. I pitched horseshoes, pitched quarters, played curveball for money, shot jumpers, dice, cards, one die. How to just one die. Whoever get the highest number. We just made up any type of game. And growing up, the word was bet. Whatever you say I can't do, and I say you can't do, if two people got a disagreement, the next word is bet.